Guy, Nohar Singh, and all the others working hard behind the scenes, as well as our sponsors. Thank you all for making this program possible. Let me also commiserate on behalf of the Globespan team, commiserate with the Ramharak family on the loss of a family member and the illness of another. Dr. Beturam Ramharak was supposed to be with us tonight, but unfortunately, because of these problems, he cannot. Our commiserations, our feelings, our empathy with Dr. Ramharak and his family. Viewers, Guyana is a point in its history when we can directly contribute to its uplift or indirectly and directly aid its fall. These and other elections are the only means through which the populace can express its will as to who they believe can take the country forward. Our votes are not just to put a person or a party in power. Our vote is really entrusting the future of our children into their hands, into the hands of a handful of people that will take control of the country. So it must be something that we do with conscience, with maturity. And we are within a week of polling day in Guyana, and we must continue to discuss and address the historical issue of race and racist politics and where it has taken our people, as well as the shaping and reshaping of politics for the next decade. Tonight we have joining with me Dr. David Hinds, who I believe is experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties, but he has been outspoken on both matters. And as we wait Dr. Hinds joining us, I must commend all of the political parties across Guyana. The campaigning has been going on. A lot of immature statements have been made across the country, but yet at the same time, the parties have shown a determination that they can lead, a determination that they can bring people together, and a determination that they can promise, of course, to run the business of this country. And let's not make any mistakes about it. It is the business of this country that is under threat by the failure of politicians to put country first. In many ways, our history has shown that the politicians who have gravitated towards power has chosen friends and families over country, has chosen the benefit of family, the benefit of politics, the benefit of close circles over country. And that is something that we need to be very careful of as we go into these elections. And as we wait the joining of this platform tonight by Dr. David Hinds, let me remind viewers too that the issue of race has been one that has been extremely disturbing to a lot of people. You see, when we talk race, it's nice to say that one can care for one's culture. It's good enough to say one can look after one's culture or even race, but one cannot want to look after one's culture or race at the detriment of another. We're all equal. We're all of this country. All of our foreparents gave their sweat, blood, and tears to this country. And therefore, it is therefore incumbent upon us to ensure that our discussions and deliberations, politically tainted, should not be racially tainted. In other words, we should ensure that in all of our deliberations, we eradicate this issue of race. Tonight, viewers, we want to discuss a little bit of race in politics and a little bit of politics in the racial mix of Guyana. And the two main parties that's of course going up to the elections are the PPPC and the coalition APNO AFC. And of course, there are the newer, and some call them smaller parties. For me and for many viewers, I do know that the smaller parties may have in many ways failed a litmus test a couple of weeks ago when the opportunity came for them to coalesce, when the opportunity came for many of them to create a joint list. And for many observers, the fact that a lot of the smaller parties decided that they wanted to go alone mean that there are too many people in Guyana that still support and still propagate a winner takes all based political system. And that will not do us any good. So as we're gearing towards the next week, as we're gearing towards next week's elections, general and regional elections in Guyana, there are many problems and there are many issues facing Guyana that we are now evaluating the performance of the politicians who want a second term and those who would have been there in the past and want to have a go again. And that is something that viewers and those who will be exercising their right to vote will take into consideration as they go by. As I said at the top of the program, the issue here is not one of who are we backing, not who we want as president or which party we want to see in place. But what we're doing here is entrusting the future, entrusting our children and grandchildren into the hands of a group of people that can either take this country forward or sink it into a place that it cannot return from. So we are still awaiting Dr. Hinds, as I said, and a couple of things that we'd like to discuss tonight is this whole issue of race. This whole issue of race and the perception that race-based politics is extremely detrimental. And we know it is to Guyana. It is detrimental to us all. It is detrimental to not just Guyana, but it is detrimental to our future. It is detrimental to everything that we think we want and everything we think we want to build for ourselves. So yes, to all the viewers out there, we are within a week of election time. Yes, to all the viewers out there and all those who will be exercising their right to vote. I repeat, our votes are not just to put a person or a party in power. It is to entrust the future of our children in their hands. And therefore, conscience, maturity, and not childishness must be the guiding factors towards us placing that mark for whichever party we want to see take the hands of our children for the future. As I said, viewers, ladies and gentlemen, to join this discussion tonight is Dr. David Hinds, who has been outspoken on both matters. His astute comments on matters of race and politics has been an eye-opener to a lot of observers and to a lot of people across the country. Unfortunately, in Guyana, when we talk or when we evaluate racial problems, we ourselves are deemed as racists. But as I said, we can evaluate race, we can also promote our race, but we do not do so at the detriment of another. Everyone has to build, everyone has to go on. Dr. Hinds, welcome to this program. We know you've had a little bit of a technical issue, but welcome to this Globespan discussion on politics and race in Guyana.
Thank you very much for having me, Yob.
Wonderful. So, at the top of the program, I reminded viewers that we're just days away from elections, basically. And, I mean, it's a lot of people get caught up in the emotions of elections, and which is unavoidable. But at the end of the day, Dr. Hinds, you are on the APNO AFC list. You have, I believe, expressed paradoxically a dissatisfaction with some of the areas of their performance or non-performance. And you have been outspoken of your dissatisfaction, yet you are on their list. Does it reflect that you're satisfied with the promises and their ability, given the right conditions, to deliver on those promises?
No. This is not about promises. As you said, I have been critical of the coalition. I have, at every twist and turn, whenever they've taken the wrong direction, in my opinion, I've said so, and I've said so publicly. So I'm very clear about that. It means, therefore, that I am not supporting the coalition because of their performance, nor am I supporting the coalition because of promises, because I think promises is not what you should put before people. I am supporting the coalition because of where we are at the historical juncture, and I am making a calculation as to what the immediate future holds. And from my standpoint, we have a winner-take-all politics, you know. The winner-take-all politics means that parties have to compete against each other. And we have two big parties that have not structurally and in real transformational way moved Guyana forward. But one of those parties has made an attempt to coalesce with other parties. And that, for me, is a fundamental difference between the other party, which has said, look, we're not interested in coalescing, you have to come and join us. And so, therefore, my support for the coalition has to do with the possibilities that it holds for transformation. For me, elections must lead to transformation. We talk about poverty. We're talking about our deep ethnic problems. We're talking about our political system. We're talking about the big and fundamental things. And for me as a revolutionary, I'm asking myself, in the context of winner take all, which one of the two sides offers my politics the better chance to articulate and to try for change. So therefore, I'm supporting the coalition precisely because it is a coalition. And I'm doing so very clear in my mind about the shortcomings. And I don't need to repeat them because I've said them right and thing. And so I am not supporting this coalition because of race or because I think they're going to do better. All of that, is for other people to determine. I am saying that, look, from the time I've entered politics, I have been concerned about transformation of the society. And, if you build a bridge here or you build a road here and so on, those things are good. Nazi regime built wonderful bridges, so on. So I am not judging. I'm not judging a party by that. I'm judging a party by its capacity for transformation. And I'm saying the coalition offers the space for transformation. It's not going to be easy because you're dealing with a big party that is bent on controlling and dominating the coalition. So I'm going into this with my eyes wide open.
Well, to our viewers out there, Dr. Hinds wrote an excellent article, many, but the one I'm referring to wasn't too long ago, when he went in brief, albeit in brief, but he went into the reasoning as he has done so for backing the coalition with the PNC. The PNC is a party that the WPA gave up its blood to fight against and to oppose in terms of what was its ideology then. And he did speak to, in that article, I would encourage viewers to read it, that he did speak to basically a matter of the lesser of two evils, but more so, if I may paraphrase, and Dr. Hinds, you can of course come in here, he spoke to the fact which he just did, the fact that he's back in the coalition because it's the only means to move away from the winner takes all. Did I rightly paraphrase?
Yes, you're quite correct.
Correct. Now there is another recent article in which you spoke the race baiting politics of Guyana, and that in the short term, parties who want to preach this race, they're not really offering a solution to Guyana's problem. They're basically a problem. But Dr. Hinds, I know Harold and myself and you, we would have had individual discussions about taking this discussion beyond elections, which we will do. But every election, it's about race. Every election has been about race. And even between elections, I mean, I don't mean to pelt stones here, but viewers cannot forget, for example, what Jagdeo might have said at a platform about lock them out or something like that. And viewers, of course, cannot forget what Vola Lawrence said about I want to employ my own. How can we ever move off from things like this in your mind?
Well, I mean that's our historical challenge, and I think one has to accept that the kind of society that we live in is not your normal society because of the ethnic differences and the way the ethnic differences have developed over time. I think the question here is not how to get rid of race, because I don't think that we are going to get rid of that racial animosity, certainly not in the short to medium term, but how we can channel the positive aspects of that. And I think that's it. And let me explain what I mean here. I accept that African Guyanese, the community that I know better, that I work in, that by and large, they are going to vote based on ethnic preference and ethnic emotions. I accept that. But here is what I've been saying to that community. Look, you cast your vote for ethnic reasons. But at the end of the day, please demand policies from your party that is going to deal with the chronic problems that you have had for centuries. All right? And so therefore, what I've been trying to do is to try within the context of race to inject policies there. And I think that if we have a force on the Indian Guyanese side that is doing that, we can begin to alter race, not to stop it, but within the context of race, to argue for taking revolutionary positions. That's in question. You know, do not be blind. When you elect, when you vote and the government of your preference comes into power, do not sit down. Demand policy. If you win, if African Guyanese can win policies that deal with questions of poverty, that deal with questions of want, that deal with questions of underdevelopment, it will spill over into the Indian Guyanese community and the Amerindian community. So that is my approach to race. Right. That I don't think that it's about to go away tomorrow.
Correct. And you're right. On the political scene, though, the PPPC has boasted publicly that it presents the most balanced, racially balanced list of candidates and the most racially balanced set of persons coming together in a political party. What's your comment on that?
I have not looked at the balance of the list, but if it is so, I think that is an encouraging start. But I think mere balance of a list by both parties doesn't impress me. It is whether, in fact, the policies that you are advancing lead to the working class liberation, lead to ethnic satisfaction within the country. You see, because you can have the most balanced list. You can, you know, if you're on the coalition side, you can have any number of Indians. But if they are there just for you to boast, you have a balance. That's not how I judge you. I'm judging you by your policies and how those policies are in fact going to open up spaces for us to tone down and decrease our ethnic animosity.
Correct. But the other side to the ethnic animosity is yes, as you said, winner takes all politics, but it's also an economic issue, isn't it? A lot of Indo-Guyanese feel that with the PPP, they're economically better off, and vice versa, Afro-Guyanese feel with the PNC and government, they're better off.
But I don't know. I mean, I can speak for the African Guyanese side. I don't know. From my work in the African Guyanese community and moving from community to community, I am not sure that they think that they're better off economically. I differ. And if you have a sober conversation with them, I find different. I think they're saying that, look, I am voting out of my fear, and it's my fear of the other side. And that is why I've been saying to them, look, yes, I understand you're voting out of your fear of the other side, but at the same time, you have to make policy demands of your side. You see, and so therefore, one has to look for creative ways to deal with this race problem, because we've tried, rhetoric. We've tried putting a black and an Indian at the top of it. We've tried balancing the thing. We've not shifted.
Reality has changed. Yeah, reality has changed.
It is not. But we have a country where these groups live, and we have to also take into consideration the Amerindians who are now coming into their own. So whereas we had this thing between African and Indians, I think that is beginning to change, as Amerindians are now letting their voice felt, and they're coming at it from their own ethnic standpoint. So now we have 3 ethnic groups that are in this thing, which I think will force us to change the paradigm through which we look at our politics.
Right. So here is a pointed question that I've gotten in my inbox for you, and it deals with again your political stance. And here we're gonna come back to the racial discussion, which is extremely important. But it is that your current political stance with the coalition is based on your feelings. I'm quoting here on one of the questions, is based on your feelings about one person in the PPP, and that is Mahadeo. True or false?
False. I don't deal with personality politics. It's not my thing. Insofar as I have critiqued Mahadeo as part of something larger than himself. I don't think Mahadeo is out there by himself and so forth. So no, the answer to that is false. In the same way, I have problems with the top leadership of the coalition, but that is not going to influence my support for the coalition, because I think it's more than that person. You see? So the answer is absolutely not. Absolutely not. Look, if the PPP engages the notion of coalition politics tomorrow, my attitude to that party changes. Let me say that emphatically. If the PPP were to get to the place where the PNC has gotten, I will have to engage the PPP, because at the end of the day, what I want to see is a government in Guyana that represents all of the people and that deals with the interests, the economic and cultural and political interests of all of the people. I don't pretend that the coalition does that. The coalition doesn't do that. The coalition, at the end of the day, still represents the mere half of the population.
Correct.
But what I'm talking about here is possibilities for possibilities.
So let me read a question to you. I'm going to probably join the questions from both Ms. Banmati Ram and Kevin Tolaram that asks about, you're quite right in saying policies. Policies are more important than politics. But how do you hold the politicians accountable for delivering or not delivering on their policies?
Well, you've got to build a mass movement to do that. In our perusal of history, we only hold governments accountable when we energize the civil society space. That's the term they use these days, right? But you have got, because they're instincts. You see, in our people on both sides, on all sides of the ethnic divide, as I've been trying to explain, they're ethnic instincts. But when you get below those ethnic instincts, they are the real economic instincts. They're survival instincts. They know that they were unemployed or underemployed in 2015, and in 2019 they're still underemployed. They know that. And it's how do you speak to that within the context of the other instinct, the ethnic instinct? How do you speak with that? And I have to agree that it's a thin line that one has to walk. But I think the only way that we are going to hold leaders counter is by building a mass movement. And I said the model that we have for that is the Rodney/WPA model. All right. Here were people who most of them were African Guyanese, and they said, "Look, this African Guyanese government is working against the interests of the country. We are opposing you on a matter of principle, on a matter of class." So you go to Linden, where Burnham is strong, has always been strong, but you engage them at another level, and you get them to see that you can love Burnham and it's what he represents in the larger thing. But you also have to fight for your own material interests, and I'm quoting Walter Rodney here, right? So it's about how you balance the two. And I think that is what made the WPA effective in the 1970s and the 1980s. It was able to balance the two. I do not think that Indians ever stopped loving Jagan and the PPP. I don't think Black people ever stopped loving Burnham and the PNC. We saw that in 1992. Once we got free elections, they went right back there. What we were able to do was to say to them, how do you balance your protection and your admiration of the political party and its leaders in your own material interests? The challenge was a challenge in the 1970s, and I think it's a challenge today. Persons like myself, I think, are pivotal in trying to build that kind of practice in the society.
But isn't there a dichotomy? I mean, if David Hinds, if Dr. Hinds is part of the government, is it then ethical for Dr. Hinds to, I mean, this is at least what the government is saying, it's unethical for Dr. Hinds to oppose anything that the government does? I mean, look, I'm gonna say this to you. I've had a couple of ministers on this program, and they have always excused their poor performance with two things. One, Jagde when boys did worse. I mean, it's always you're excusing. And I said to them, that's why they're in opposition.
Yeah.
Right? And the second thing, they're saying that you got to go with the float. In order to keep the coalition going, you have to sometimes look for the greater good. And so ignore the faults. Do you agree, and will you support such a...
No, that's not my political tradition. I come from a different political tradition. I come from a political tradition of balance, right? If the WPA is part of government, however small that part is, the WPA has a responsibility to contribute to governance, and I respect that, right? And that is one of the planks on which the party has to walk. But I think we also have to be true to the tradition of the WPA. And the tradition of the WPA is that we are not yes men and yes women who see something is wrong and go along with it. That's not the tradition that the UC Guyana represented. And that's not the tradition Walter Rodney represented, of our kind of founding fathers, if you will, of the party and the movement. So no, I know that is the political culture, and that is why I have made it the determination that the parties in the coalition, and I would say this to my PNC friends, the parties have to do two things. And simultaneously, in a sense, you have to break out of the old culture. You've got to support governance, but you also have to support principle. Right? That if the party sees the government is going in the wrong direction, no, I'm not with that. I'm not with that at all.
Correct. Right? But then, I mean, one could counter what you said there with what was the WPA stance with the NCM and the entire year-long, thing that happened following the NCM and all of that.
Well, listen. The question of the ends depends on what you mean by what was the WPA stance on the NCM, right? Our position was very clear. You had a development, and the government side decided to invoke a judicial review. It was its right to do that. The other side decided that it was going to go with what you call strict constitutionalism. So here were the 2 points you have. One is using judicial review, and one is using strict constitutionalism. And it played itself out, and here we are today. all right? And the WPA came down on the side of the right to judicial review. And that's where we are. Once the court ruled that you are wrong, then you are wrong, because judicial review means you're asking the court to review. And if the court say you're wrong, you're wrong. And once the court said you're wrong, the WPA accepted that and said, let's have elections. And the earliest, if people remember, I was on this very program arguing for an election no later than December.
Correct. But the other counter that has come into me is the WPA's was the WPA outspoken against the unilateral appointment of I think Patterson as the GCOM chairman when the Chief Justice gave her views as to the president's how he should act in the appointment, but the president say he doesn't have to take her counsel.
Yeah, the WPA spoke out against it. The WPA said that even if the president was constitutionally empowered to do that, it was politically bad. You were opening yourself to eventually what happened. People can go back and see my comments. People can go back and look at the WPS program, Walter Rodney Grounders, every Sunday, and you will see that we were very clear about that. We were saying that, look, he's saying that he is empowered by the Constitution, and we are saying that even if he was, we said it was a politically bad decision, and we stood by that. Eventually, court said that he was constitutionally out of order.
Correct. The court vindicated what you said. So, Dr. Hinds, the state media should, in your view, as part of the coalition, should a new government, if it is the APNU AFC, retain state media, or should it privatize?
No. I don't believe in privatizing. I think, and perhaps it's my old theological bias coming out here, because I think that the state can play an important role. I think in terms of shaping public opinion, you need a state media. What we need is a responsible state media.
But that is not an oxymoron. I mean,
but you're right. You're right. We have not had that, right? My fear is that if you leave public media to private interests, then you are leaving the society to the mercy of private individuals in terms of shaping, and I'm ideologically opposed to that. I think there are certain things the state should continue to do. I think things like transportation, public health, public education, partly in the media, I support that. I am opposed. I'm opposed to the use of the state media as part interest, which has been going on. I prefer the BBC model, because I think if there is a model as to how you should use, the BBC is the model, and I feel that the state media should move towards it, but we are only going to get there if the executive gets out of control of the state media. And here is where I'm thinking that one has to have a public-private partnership that governs the state media.
But in reality, would it ever happen? Because here is the other problem we have. The other problem we have with regards to state media and everything else is the continued use of state assets leading up to elections.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people, taxpayers view this, they abhor this, because it was a platform that the current government opposed in the past.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. It's a very difficult hurdle. I think that in order for the state media to act in a neutral way, the two sides, the two political parties, have to come to an agreement that this is how it's going to be done. To get them to come to that agreement is exactly the challenge that we have. My own example, I think, is very clear. I was approached to write in the state media after the government came to power, and I understood that to mean that you are now turning a new page, and that I am free to express my views, including my criticism of the government in the state media. All right. And I felt that what people like Lincoln Lewis and myself were doing, that we were in our own way trying to transform the state media into a more neutral thing. Of course, the people in government have other ideas.
Correct.
And we know what happened.
So we're going to take a short break because somebody just popped up a question here to me to say, but isn't that then saying that you backing them to continue doing things like that in the future? We'll come to that answer after this short commercial break. Devin?
Looking for an embroidery service or advertising services? Look no further than Inspire Incorporated. Get your very own personalized items that include rubber stamps, ID cards, mouse pads, diaries, polos, office wear, and so much more. Create your own logo or messages on any substract. It's very quick and efficient. Call Inspire Incorporated today at 222-2042 or visit at 62 Area Q, Turkine, Guyana. Times are changing. There are more airlines operating to Guyana. Travelspan GT offices in Guyana have very low fares. Fares have never been so low from Guyana to New York. Choose from Caribbean Airlines, American Airlines, and others. Call Travelspan GT for low fares and your choice of airlines. From Guyana to New York, fares start from $278. And from Guyana to Toronto, fares start from $354. And from Guyana to Trinidad, fares start from $174. Call Travelspan GT for any destinations. In addition to low fares, Travelspan GT has cruises, hotels, and tour packages to Europe, Dubai, India, Dominican Republic, and many more. Call our Georgetown office at 227-1701 or Rose Hall at 337-4287 or New Amsterdam at 333-6230. Travelspan also has offices in New York, Trinidad, and Guyana. Again, call 227-1701. Travel plans, call Travelspan.
And we're back live with Dr. David Hinds in an open, frank discussion about race and politics in Guyana. Dr. Hinds has been quite outspoken in his belief that policies should be what shapes our decision as we go into casting our votes on election day. We have asked Dr. Hinds a couple of questions, including his belief or his support for the coalition going to the future. Dr. Hinds, just now before the commercial break, we spoke a little bit about state media, the use of state assets leading up to elections. We also spoke a little bit about the Chronicle, and you mentioned that, yes, you're a good example of how things say. But the issue here is that what will the WPA do? What will you, Dr. Hinds, do after March 2nd to create a broad base, a mass campaign, as you rightly say, that can oppose things that your government may very well be in breach of?
And you're right. Hopefully we get some resources. Our party has been so short of resources, but we intend resources, once we have resources, to go into the communities immediately after election. We've said that very publicly, and to begin to rebuild that movement, because it was day before, and to rebuild that movement, to ask people to be their own watchdogs of the government, including the government that they elected. It's new for this new generation. The people who didn't experience the Rodney era wouldn't know of that kind of politics. Often I run into difficulty with people who ask the same questions. I mean, how can you be part of this thing and oppose the thing at the same time? You want to say to them, but there is a strand in our politics and there is a strand in our instinct. Exactly that. Our parents loved us, but they cut our tail when we did badly. You know, I mean, so it's not something that is impossible. And so therefore, yes, the WPA intends to walk on two legs. What people don't know is that while the big campaign has been going on, WPA has been holding its own small public meetings around the place. Right? A lot of people don't know that. Our partners are not necessarily happy about it, but we reserve the right to do that. And we did it. Right? And so it is that kind of independence. You know, what Rex Netterford used to call it chaos in order. and order in chaos. That we have got to bring back. So we are going to try to build that movement, and this is a movement for Guyana. You know, Ravidev had come back to Guyana and had gone into the Indian Guyanese community and begin to do a kind of work in the Indian community that I'm talking about here. And at some point, Dev and our forces on the African side, at some point we met. And that is why Ravidev and I remain politically cordial to each other, despite our disagreements and so on and so forth, because we recognize that you need another movement in these ethnic communities in order to hold these ethnic parties.
Correct. So let us come a little bit to more of the political parties in the current race. I am aware, I don't know where the viewers are, I'm aware of your views, you have written about it with regards to the newer, the smaller parties. And a lot of observers, yours truly included, I believe that the litmus test for any small party or new party was that opportunity to go on a joiners list, to really coalesce, to become, and the fact that many of them chose not to showed that they were nothing more than subscribing to a winner-take-all situation. What's your view of the smaller parties, the newer parties? Do you think it would have an impact on the PPP and the APNU AFC parties?
No, I don't think so. If you look at our history, Dr. Mahadeo, whenever you've had new parties that have come on the scene, whether United Force wasn't so new, you know, but let's talk about like the WPA and the AFC with her. You have got to distinguish yourself in a dramatic way from the other side in order to get people to look at you. You see, when the WPA came onto the scene, it said, look, this is revolution. And it was an era of revolution. And young people of all races said, all right, let me check you out, right? When the AFC came on the scene in 2006, I think we had ground party politics had become such a weight on people's shoulder in both ethnic groups. And they said, look, we're not going to collate with either of the two parties. And that resonated. Now they reneged on it later on, but at the point in 2006 and 2011, it resonated. Give those examples to say that if you're a new party, the burden is on you to say how dramatically and fundamentally different you are from the others. And I think the new parties have not done that. So they've not been able to capture the imagination and the attention of the population. And one of the reasons that they've not been able to collate is that they have not come, except perhaps for ANO, which as a clear position, I don't necessarily agree with them, but none of the newer parties come with any deep ideological thing. It's as if, people come together and a few people come together, we form a little thing and we say, RFP is a new party. That's not how parties are formed. You have to have a reason for being.
Correct. And I tell you something, what has started to emerge, I don't know if I'm sure you would have picked it up. What seemed to have started to emerge was a couple of things. One was that a lot of, quite a number of new parties, they saw that because there was the coalition and because there was the PPP, there seems to be space for the third force. And so they dream of being that third force that can hold a balance of power. And two, and I think a lot of us are tired of the rhetoric. If you have something against Jack, they'll go create a new party. If you have something, and that rhetoric cannot do well for our country. It is believed by many, and you have said it too, you oppose many of the policies of APNU FC, but guess where you are? You're opposing it from within. You're fighting the fight from within. And the same thing has to happen with the PPP. Dr. Hinds, there's been a lot of talk about oil contracts. Your party has been one of a grassroots ideology, empowering of people base. Would you support or Is it your thinking that the oil contract should be re-examined, if not renegotiated?
We have not had that discussion within our party, and I'll be frank with you. Partly because there are different views on moving forward within the party, and we have not really had an exhaustive discussion about whether, in fact, renegotiation is something that we could argue for. But let me remind persons. One, we were not part of the negotiation of the contract. We were not. We were not consulted. Dr. Thomas had written on oil more than anybody else. He wasn't asked to be on any team. That thing. So we want to make that very clear. And that's one of the gambles you make when you go into coalition with big parties, right? And you are small. You're ideologically different, right? And also, I wanted to be remembered by viewers, listeners, and the country that when the government refused to make the contract public, WPA came out very clear and said the contract should be made public. All right? Okay, so here is my position. My position is, look, I don't know of any third world country, any country that is in the position that we are in without leverage and so on, that has been able to get a very good contract out of these persons and these companies. It seems from what all the experts are saying that our contract is worse than others. That even given our lack of leverage, it is a very bad contract. My attitude to it is that, okay, all right, there are persons who want to fight that fight. I want to pay my attention not to that fight. My attention, and perhaps the WPA may go in that direction, well, not may, they have already gone in that direction, is that while others are fighting that fight, we want to fight the fight about what we get and how we divide what we get. Because we may be busy trying to renegotiate while the money's coming and it's going where it's not supposed to go. So we are saying if there are persons, and there are persons who are carrying out that fight, we're not opposing that fight. But we're saying there is another fight, and that is how you distribute what you have. And those who have seen the struggle that we have had with the cash transfer, which we have put on the table as a working class policy, have seen the struggle that we have had to get that, give me a manifesto, understand why it's important to keep our eye also on how what we get is being distributed.
Correct. But here is why to a lot of observers the oil contracts re-examination, if not renegotiation, is extremely important, is because of a number of factors, and not all of it relates to financial or economic. There is the considerable danger of the lack of appreciation for environmental disasters. I've hosted 2 or 3 shows on this same platform with persons who express a lot, experts, who express a lot of concerns about what's happening and how we planning to, God forbid, cater for a spill and things like that. And the other thing you mentioned, rightly so, that the lack of technical know-how in Guyana might have, contributed. But Dr. Hinds, I don't necessarily agree with you, because you are the government. Go and employ people 1% more if you could have gotten for $1 million US cost would mean a lot of money to the people of this country.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I'd be foolish to stand there and said that, the contract is not a bad contract and we missed the boat in a lot of regards. I'm saying that I'm interested in building up leverage, because I think at the end of the day, it's about that. So I'm saying build leverage from where we are today, and going forward, begin to fight for some of the things. For example, the question of environment. I mean, one cannot not be serious about that, because if we are putting our environment at danger, then at the end of the day, whatever we get will come to naught. If the liability for that is going to be on us in the government. So I think things like those, aspects like those of the contract, I think should be raised, should be put on the table here, right? We know how the international forces operate. They're going to threaten you to walk away. They're going to use their leverage to do. So rather than threatening them with renegotiation, I am saying let us approach it in a more collegial way, where we open a conversation with the oil companies. And I want to say, look, the coalition cannot do it on its own. EPP should not do it on its own. If we are going to reopen a conversation with the companies towards the end result of renegotiation, it has to be done by both parties at the table. We have to have a national approach to it, not a partisan.
Sorry, I would want to disagree with you on the perspective of oil is leverage enough. Leave it if you want. We have the oil. But here is the other interesting scenario. I had one of the former ministers of the current ruling party on a show last week. And in response to a question with regards to the contracts, he expressed an opinion that every bad thing we are hearing about the contracts is total wrong. It's total fabrication. It's total nonsense. His position is these are perfect contracts. The returns are perfect, and that Guyana could never get any better. And I found it to be quite a hard, unreasonable position to take when one knows, and I raised the things about the environment and so forth, but I felt it was a laissez-faire kind of attitude to it.
Well, maybe the minister, I saw the program and maybe the minister was campaigning. I don't know. When people campaign, they say all kinds of things. There's no way, given all the information that we've gotten, that we can reasonably say that that contract was perfect or near perfect. One can disagree with what some forces in the country are using the unfortunate mistakes that we made to do. Some people are using it to pound the government. Some people are using it to bring them out of office. One can disagree with that, but I think one cannot reasonably say that the contract was a good contract. No, we have too much information to be able to say that.
But you see, Dr. Hinds, the fact that WPA wasn't invited to the negotiations or the discussions, pre-negotiations, or the PPPC, or I mean, it does lend to a lot of openness in terms of perception. And I like the point you made earlier, and I have been calling Guyanese on every program. This is what we need to oppose whoever is in government, whoever forms the government. Let us create a mass movement in Guyana that can oppose bad deals for Guyana. This has nothing to do with race. I want to ask you, sugar. I know that Dr. Thomas would have made certain recommendations, but I also know that WPA, I believe, was supportive of the COI on sugar. Yet the government went outside of the recommendations of the COI. But what's the WPA and what's, but in addition to the WPA, what is Dr. Hinds' position on the sugar and the lot of the sugar workers?
I am, first of all, I was supportive of the recommendations of the COI. It was not a closed estate. The WPA was supportive. Again, the WPA was not part of the decision to close Sugar Estate. Let me make that emphatically clear here. Neither Dr. Thomas, in his capacity as an economist and a policy person, nor the WPA was party to closing the sugar estates. I want to make that elusively clear. All right, we supported the recommendations of the COI, which did not recommend the closure of estates. Now, once you make the move to close the estates, it was incumbent on the government to balance what that was going to do to communities and its plan to right size. And again, you see, this is my frustration with politics in Guyana and frankly speaking, in a lot of the Caribbean countries. I think politicians do not balance enough. It's either one way or not the other way. And then we divide societies. If you want the right size, which I have absolutely no problem with, because we have to make sugar profitable if sugar workers are going to continue to benefit in the long run. So I think there needed to be a balance between your policy of right sizing and to ensure that families were not affected negatively. And I think we did not do that in a seamless way. I think if the government were to go back and look at what it did, it would have done it differently, and it should have done it differently. Correct. I think ever since then, they've been trying to repair the damage. And I think here is where I am with them, in the sense that whether they admit they made a mistake, politicians don't admit they make mistakes. Nevertheless, your very attempt to do damage control is a tacit acceptance that you made an error in the way you went about doing it.
Correct. The issue too is one of lack of economic foresight. I mean, I believe they should have probably listened to Dr. Thomas a little bit more, because you know what? There's a shortage in the world market for sugar. You know what? Refined sugar today, retail price is 40 cents a pound. So there is definitely, I mean, and the other point why I mentioned sugar, the other point I'd like your comment on. Would you be supportive of a good portion of the oil revenues to be used to create agricultural uplift? Because after oil, we still have to be viable.
I am glad for that question. I'm glad for that question. And that's why I go back to how we use the oil revenue. I think a large part of it has to go into agricultural development. I mean, that's where Guyana's strength is. You don't have 83,000 square miles of land to waste. I mean, agriculture ultimately has to be the bedrock. So we have to do agriculture different. And so, yes, I think we have to invest in an agricultural policy, not in the old way where we just produce raw material, but get into manufacturing, diversifying the agricultural sector. But I think that remains the bedrock of any developmental plan that we have going forward.
Thank you. Let us talk quickly about two other important areas. Education, because I think that what has been happening, sadly for Guyana after 53 years of independence or more, the university is a far place from where it should be. Shouldn't it be privatized? Shouldn't it be something that is probably better managed than politically appointed boards? And two is health. I mean, and the third factor, I mean, we're getting to closing time. So education, health, because now there's shortage of drugs all over the country, and not just now, over the past 2 years. But the third factor is corruption. Has the WPA had a position? There was the drug ban fiasco, there was the Durban Park fiasco. Has WPA and does WPA have a position going into the future about curbing proactively corruption?
Yes.
So education, health, and corruption.
Yeah, let me start with corruption. Yes, the WPA is very, very clear about corruption. You're not going to develop Guyana without corruption. The other day, my friend Freddie Kisoon asked me to name one big policy that the government accepted since 2015 that WPA put forward. And I was laughing to myself because I was wondering where Freddie lives. The State Asset Recovery Unit is a WPA's proposal. It's a big. It has not done enough in terms of what it was set out to, partly because legislation and all that stuff has not been completed. But in terms of curbing corruption, that was our initiative, our suggestion, our policy proposal to the last government. And they've set up the agency. One can quarrel with the sloth of the agency, but it's there. And it shows the WPA's and how important we think corruption, halting corruption, eliminating corruption, how important we think that is to development. We think that you can't have corruption and development, right? And that's our firm position as far as corruption is concerned. And we are going to continue to support the whole initiative of asset recovery because it has worked in societies around the world. I think it's a non-conflictual way of restoring assets to the country.
Is it going to ever be effective in a country where there is winner-take-all politics? I mean, it will be used as a political tool.
Well, yes, there's always that possibility, Dr. Mahadeo. We bear that in mind, and that is why we have to constantly try to get the country closer.
Because not even the coalition has chosen to adhere to the simplest of things like the Integrity Commission.
Yes, and that's the struggle we have. But what CLRGM said, there is always something to be done.
So education and health.
Education, I think, is pivotal, and I'm in support of free tuition at the university. I'm in support of all that kind of stuff, and I have to be, because education, I think, is a birthright of societies like ours. People in society, without education, we would not be where we are. But I think we have to take a deeper look at education. So we are going to have people not pay tuition at the university. But what are we doing about the curriculum of the university? What are we doing about the infrastructure at the university? What are we doing about creating the kind of environment where the students who go into university are ready for university? So I am talking here about a holistic education a policy I don't see from either of the two parties. There's a lot of rhetoric, there is a lot of that, but in terms of from nursery to university, I think we are far off from that, and we have to ensure that. I mean, literacy or illiteracy is a big problem in all communities, right? Where is the public literacy program? Where is the homework centers where children go home in the afternoon? There is no parent at home because the mother gone doing watchman work. The father is often not there. We demand that the children do their homework. Nobody to have them. What about homework centers in the communities where they can go and get their homework done? I'm giving that as an example of we need flesh on the bone beyond the rhetoric. I think that we have to invest big in education, but not just education form, but education substance. Healthcare, I think, is equally important. And I'm not satisfied with what I see, because I'm saying you're post-plantation society. You have struggled for 50 years to make ends meet. You never have enough to invest in education and agriculture. Now you have a chance to invest in those things. It means that you have to do so differently. You can't have the same old paradigm, all right? We have to be able to ensure the delivery of healthcare right there in Guyana. But therefore, we have to invest in that expertise.
Agreed. But I mean, by and large, I would think that healthcare would have really, I mean, not advanced in any way from the past to now. It's digressed, it's gone down. And the sad thing is that when we get into power, we forget how long people wait in the lines to be treated like a fool by some person who feels they're too qualified to deal with poor people in this country. So the misnomer of free healthcare is not free. It's not free because the way patients are being treated at the healthcare facilities, it costs them their life and more. So so when we talk about healthcare, it's much more than just the freeness of tablets. It's a system. So, Dr. Hinds, it's been wonderful to have you tonight. I have a final question for you, and it goes back to our discussion to be started with on a matter of races and moving away from the winner takes all politics. Do you feel that it is time that Guyana starts to think actively about moving away from the political system for more to more like a federal base, more like a where persons from their own area are voted and evaluated by people there rather than the centralized system that we have presently?
I've had that long discussion with Mahadeo and so on. My suspicion, reticence about the federal proposal is that I think what we will do is federalize our issues. So Indians will be the majority in Essequibo, Africans may be the majority in Demerara, and Indians may be the majority in Berbice. And so I don't think that solves the problem of jointness. And so therefore, that is why I'm reticent. I haven't closed my mind to it, right? I'm open to it. I believe people in their communities, once we strengthen their local government and decentralize power where local government is not totally dependent on central government, and the people in their communities must be able to elect leaders not from a party, but whether that person is a community leader and knows the community, and so on and so forth. Therefore, I support the reinstatement of the village councillors. I think it's a level of government that is closest to the people. And I think that culturally, Guyanese are more tuned to the local government than the neighborhood councils. So I want to support that as a move forward. I think we have to put the issue of power sharing or shared governance back on the table. And it has to be a litmus test of political parties. I would argue that I will tell people, and I have done that. I've told people, look, vote, but put a price on your vote. And one of the things that we've got to put on the table is the question of shared governance. It's the only way. It's the only way we are going to be able to contain these problems that are holding us back. My goodness, we are going to be a rich country in terms of what we used to have money-wise and what we will have, but we will continue to be a very poor country if our ethnic groups are not able to present a united political front. One doesn't have to leave the PPP and join the NC or join the coalition to have ethnic and power sharing or ethnic unity. It is our understanding and our acceptance that we live in that country and that we have different views about politics, but we have common interests. So different views and common interests, I think we have to find a way to merge it too.
So, Dr. Hinds, thank you so much. And I said that was the last question, but I actually have some more, just two more. One is to, as we get to exit time for the program, what is your message, not in terms of telling people how to vote, but housekeeping on election day? I would like this platform urges people, vote and go home or go back to work. Don't loiter, don't linger, let the process work. What's your advice?
I have no problem with that. I understand that because of a statement made by a minister that people are having this conversation. And I don't think it's an issue. I think you vote and you go home. All right? You will defend your vote if you have to defend your vote later on. But in election day,
and that's what the votes are for.
Yes, let the process take a thing. We can't have violence on election day. We can't have violence on election day. Right?
Post-election violence is not
Period. We have passed that. We have done that, and we have passed that. We have to look forward now with a new eye. Oppose each other, do all the things that you do, but can't have violence. When you have violence, as we have noted, it takes decades.
Correct.
It takes decades to correct it. We're not going down that road.
Last question for you as we close tonight's program. What is Dr. David Hinds' pragmatic view of look into the crystal ball? What's going to happen on March 3rd?
I wish I could give an answer. It's going to be a close election. It's going to be a very close election. I think there is alienation in both camps, both the Indian and African Guyanese camp. And I think the side that has been able to speak to that alienation and to give hope to the alienated section of the population would be the one that will come out on top. I think the Amerindian vote is going to split. From what I'm hearing, that's what's going to happen. I think it's the extent to which those two big parties deal with the alienation. My sense is that they're not even acknowledging the extent of the alienation. And that may be a problem. To be fair, on our side, that's the role that myself and the WP have been playing. We've been trying to speak to the alienated supporters. And because we feel that they form the basis of a new movement, that you are going to vote for the coalition, and in voting for the coalition, you're opening space to deal with your alienation. That's my argument. Now, a lot of people don't agree with me. They feel that in supporting the coalition, I'm in effect supporting the sins of the coalition, the shortcomings of the coalition, and so forth. I suppose when you try to go for big things, you can be charged, as I am, of supporting the ills and so forth. It's a gamble that I'm taking, but I think that history demands people of my political orientation to look to the future. Now, people say Walter Rodney's turning his grave, that you were in a government with his murderers and so on. I asked them to look across the Caribbean and to see where all the left-wing parties are. They are in with governments that they used to fight. Right? At the end of the day, if we cannot overcome our historical differences, then we are not worth being a country. Trying to overcome those different don't mean I embrace the PNC. I have my problems with the PNC, and we are different parties. We come from different orientations and so forth. But PNC decides that it cannot win an election on its own, and that it's going to open for new forces. We hope in the interest of the country. I think that we have to engage that.
Thank you. Dr. Hinds, as an important question, providing that the international observers give the results of the election accurate, reliable, as a pass mark, if the APNO coalition, APNO AFC, does not win, will the party be prepared to accept the results that would have been certified?
I can only speak for the WPA. The WPA is opposed to rigging. They've said that openly. We will not be part of any rigging. I want to put that on the table. Secondly, once the elections have been certified by local and international observers to be free and fair, we shall abide by that. And as I said, I can only speak for myself and the WPA.
Thank you. Dr. Hinds, it's been a pleasure to have you here tonight. And I would certainly like to ask you that post-election, we need to continue to take up the discussion about race and about the development of our racial thinking. Because as you and I know, We do not propagate race at the detriment of another. We propagate race to support our own and to ensure all are empowered. So I'd like to ask you that post-election, we take that discussion further to enable that we empower people out there, and to wish you well, you and your party well, in the next election. Thank you, sir.
And before I go, Dr. Mahadeo, I know the viewership and listenership of this program is predominantly Indian Guyanese. And I want to say directly to that community that, be a little bit patient with people like myself, Don't rush to premature judgment, on us. For those of you who think that I'm a racist is someone who feels that their racial group is superior to another racial group. I do not believe African people are superior to other races. I've never said that. I've never advocated that. I have opposed a government of my own race, and I think that is a test. It's not so much that I am not a racist. It's if I see my race is doing wrong, I say, "Oh, you're wrong. You're wrong." And so therefore, I'm asking the Indian Guyanese community to be patient with people like us and to try to understand where we are coming from. I think we will be a better country if Indian Guyanese understand more African Guyanese issues and feelings and their emotions, and vice versa. If African Guyanese try to understand where Indian Guyanese are coming, what is the Indian Guyanese narrative of hurt? What is the Indian Guyanese narrative of dissatisfaction? We will do better as a nation if we are able to look across at each other and to do so not with a level of suspicion and hatred that we do today, but with a level of reasoning and acceptance of our mutual humanity.
Correct. Thank you. And it is interesting that you mentioned that, and thank you for doing so, because yes, this platform too, we have had and we have encouraged our panelists to be from all the races, and we have been very balanced. And yes, certainly we subscribe to the view that let us all be patient. This country is for every one of us. And Dr. Hinds, I join you in that call. Let us all ensure that we have mutual respect for each other. And the past, maybe in the past, we have to look to developing the future. Thank you so much for being here tonight. To our viewers out there, let me repeat what I've said every week. We just got a week more to go. Vote, but do not hate. Vote, but don't hate. Thank you all. Quite an interesting conversation, Dr. Hinds. Good night to you, and thank you for being here. Good night to our viewers. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Happy Mashramani one and all.
Thank you much.